I want to start firstly by welcoming everybody to what's our WiTT first meeting of 2018. So welcome, and we're going to have lots of interesting meetings this year, so keep tied into the website. As you can see, we seem to have chosen a very popular subject for this first meeting. Before we start, I just need to point out one or two things. So the first thing I've been asked to point out is that if by any chance the fire alarm goes off, it'll be for real, and we have to leg it out through the door that we came in, down the stairs, and the assembly point is across the road. So let's just hope that doesn't happen. I think that's that. The loos, you've probably all worked out, you need to go back out through the door. But of course, getting back in again means you've got to take one of those little green badges so that you can get back in, because I won't be standing there, all right? And there's no robot. Next, I'd very much like to thank Deloitte for letting us have this amazing space. This doesn't feel like an accountancy firm, does it? And I think that's the idea, that this particular space is where Deloitte does some of its more interesting digital development work with clients. So I think we're very lucky to be able to be here. We're not going to close the garage door, but the back is actually a pull-down garage door, but we're going to leave it open so that anybody who's a bit late can come in. And lastly, I'd just like to say, before I get on to the session itself, that we do have a hashtag, which is WiTT Fashion. So anybody who wants to do that, that'd be great. And all the tells me that the handle is at WiTT Group UK. Can I get that all right?
Yes.
Good, so that's all that. So moving on to the session itself, this is going to be a slightly different format from the format that we would normally use, where normally we would have a panel with questions and questions from the floor and so on. This time, because the topic is so broad and so many interesting aspects to it, we've asked our 4 speakers each to do a 10 to 15 minute slot. There will be a small amount of time at the end for questions, so don't feel you're going to get deprived of questions, and there will be some networking afterwards. But that's how we're going to run it this time, which is a bit different. But before I get the speakers to run through some of the aspects of technology and fashion, I just want to show you a 2-minute video which features 2 dresses, the second of which was what actually inspired me to think about this particular topic for women in telecoms and technology. I was wandering around World Mobile Congress in Barcelona last year, footsore as one always is, and sort of thinking, God, I really want to see another mobile phone or get another app. And wow, there was this amazing dress in front of me. Cool. It was on the admin stand, and you'll see when you see the short video that it reacts to your emotions about it through tweets. It's designed by IBM Watson, together with an English design team. I won't say very much more about it, but that got me thinking, wow, you know, there's a lot going on here in tech and fashion. So I thought it would be really good to have an event that started to explore some of that, which is why we're here today. So without any more ado, I have to ask Audrey to press the right button, because it doesn't hold the right button at the moment, I can see that.
Because we're women in tech, of course.
Of course.
So.
It's your computer.
Yeah, it's my computer. Okay.
The Met Gala is an orgy of fashion, involving all the usual suspects, but this is what had fashionistas worldwide swooning, a dress straight out of Cinderella.
What? It's like a dream.
A dream worn by actress Claire Danes. Beautiful in daylight, it blossoms in darkness. Claire told E!
It's just a work of art. My 3-year-old son was pretty stoked.
Fiber optics were woven into silk organza. There are 30 little battery packs in pouches. This isn't a UFO, unidentified fashion object. For designer Zach Posen, it's an IRY-FFO.
It's illuminating, romantic but yet futuristic floating object.
At the fancy sit-down dinner,
I won't be drinking tequila shots in this, let's just say that.
they made accommodations so Claire could sit not on her dress, but with it around her. They took a regular chair, and what did they do?
They had a regular chair, and they sawed off the back of it.
But Zach Posen's wasn't the only dress lighting up the Met.
I'm all lit up. Oh wow, why did the top suddenly get separate? Oh, the top is right!
Model Carolina Kirkova was wearing a dress that responded to tweets. The design house Marchesa collaborated with IBM Watson.
Primarily what you started to see was the color palette shift to match kind of the emotional tone of the tweets at the time.
You're gonna speak out all the tweets and everything people are thinking, all their emotions like joy, excitement, thrillness, it's all gonna show up in you.
Carolina couldn't sit down. She had to be transported by Mercedes van. How did flamboyant dressers like Lady Gaga respond to Zach Posen's illuminated gown?
Went gaga for the dress.
You could buy one like this, custom made. The designer wouldn't discuss price, but it would make an amazing wedding dress if you want to get married at night.
She was the light of the party.
Gmo, CNN, New York.
There you go. So you can see why I was amazed by that. And the fact you can't even sit down in it is it's hardly wearable, is it? Still, it is quite amazing. So now I want to start the session proper, and I want to ask Anne Prahl to give us an overview of the breadth of this subject. Now, Anne's a freelance designer. She's got over 20 years experience in the fashion industry, and she specialises in design-driven sustainable innovation. And she's currently doing a PhD at the university. I finished it. She's finished it. She's a doctor or professor, Anne.
Fully qualified doctor.
Fully qualified doctor. Don't expect her to
Design doctor.
Yeah, design doctor. Don't expect her to help if you faint. So basically, it's Anne. It's over to you, assuming that Audrey has managed to get up the right thing while I'm chatting.
If you get to view above it, just in the top line, to view. See view. On the top line. Yeah. Of the screen. Hold on. Right. Oh, well, whatever. Okay. If we don't mind a bit of.
Now, would you like the microphone, or are you happy with that?
Can you all hear me, or is it better with a microphone? Maybe.
Shout at the back. Would you prefer a microphone or not?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. Let me also see which side is here. Okay. Because I can't actually see when it's. Anyway,
They're on the other two.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. So thanks for the introduction. It's a bit noisy. So I specialise in sustainability, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit. I'm going to give you a quick overview how technology can actually enable sustainability in fashion. So what I think is really exciting is that we can use all these new tools and technologies to really lower the water, waste and carbon and environmental impact of what we do in fashion. And we can use all these technologies across the whole product life cycle. So this starts at design, then goes into manufacture, then into the consumer. How does the consumer use fashion? How do they wear it? How do they care for it? And then also at the end of life, there's technology that can help us to actually deal with garments at end of life. So the first example here really looks at design and what designers can utilize. So as designers, we've got some amazing 3D software tools coming through. And you can see here in the images on the left, these guys, they're a company from Sweden called Adelooya, and they design everything in 3D, whereas maybe in other companies people still work with pen and paper or 2D. These guys are quite advanced, working in 3D, and they never produce any samples. So what they do is they upload their designs on their website, and the customer can order some fabric swatches, which you see on the right. So while you're sitting at home shopping on your computer, looking at these amazing 3D creations, you can feel the fabrics because it's very hard to, visualize fabrics. And people make a choice whether they want to buy something. And once Atacap know how many items are sold, then they make them. So this is a really great idea to change the business model, because it means, A, you're involving the consumer in choosing something, so they feel really connected to the product and they're more likely to keep it for a longer time. But also it's on-demand production, so there won't be any excess stock. So they're really only producing what has been ordered. So this is a great way of using 3D in design. Then also here, these two images show on the left, you can see material visualization. So this material is created in 3D and it looks absolutely beautiful. So there's lots of new tools coming through for us as designers to see what materials will look like in a garment, so we don't have to prototype and sample everything, because in the fashion industry that's one of the things. When we design something, we could end up with 5 or 10 prototypes just for one style, because we want to try it out in different materials. But now with these new tools, we can actually see in 3D what it will look like, and on the right you can see one of the first virtual prototypes, and it's amazing. It's a light box. I saw it in Berlin a couple of months ago, and you feel it's really there. You want to touch it. There's this beautiful jacket, and I stupidly went in with my finger and went like that. And it's virtual, it's not real, but you can actually decide whether, because you can see it from all the angles, you can decide whether the styling is right, whether the material is right, and make your decisions without creating actual prototypes. Then in manufacture, you're probably all aware of this huge trend of automation. And this really sort of started in footwear, and Adidas and Reebok already have their fully automated local manufacture in Germany and America. So recently we saw the first t-shirt being produced by a robot. This is called Sobo, the technology, and you can see the t-shirt on the right. And this machine can churn out a t-shirt every 22 seconds, and it's estimated that in a day it can produce 800,000 t-shirts. So that's a lot of t-shirts. Whether we need them all is another story. But in terms of sustainability, the benefits are really, we reduce transportation impact, because a lot of brands have to fly in or ship in their clothes because they're late. So here we can do it, we can do it around the corner from your home. And also there won't be any excess stock, because again you can just produce whatever is needed, and if you run out you quickly make some more. So this is a really good way of manufacture in the future. Then we've got beautiful things like 3D knitting, and I think we're going to hear more about that later. But what's great about 3D knitting, you can see the Nike Flyknit on the left, which is a really iconic trainer, and I think probably lots of people in the room will actually own one. And this is actually how it's knitted. The whole upper of the shoe is knitted in one piece, which means there's absolutely no waste, because you only knit the material you need. And rather than cutting out material, sewing it and stitching it, it's just much easier to do. And Nike say they've saved 60% of waste compared to other manufacturing technologies. And between 2012 and 2016, they've saved £3.5 million of waste. So, these new amazing technologies don't only look beautiful, but they're also really good in terms of sustainability and waste reduction. And then we can also see this coming through in clothing. Commercially, Adidas recently had a pop-up shop, Knit for You, where you can go into the shop, you get measured up, personal fittings, you can choose the colour, the patterns and everything, and then within an hour or so the garment is knitted up for you, and you get a little label, and so it's your personal unique style. So again, this will create a really strong bond between the customer and this product, and they'll look after it and want to wear it for a long time. And then 3D printing always looks absolutely beautiful. It's not as advanced as 3D knitting in textiles and clothing, because the materials are obviously still quite rigid. But on the left-hand side you see a dress by Iris van Herpen, and she really pioneered this. She's been doing it for years, collaborating with architects and all kinds of other techno people to create haute couture. but obviously in commercial fashion, you're not going to see 3D printed t-shirts in H&M, in the near future. But what we're seeing on the right is a development from a university in Manchester where 3D print has been applied to a knitted base material. So that gives it much more softness, and you get the beautiful surface of 3D printing, but you get the lovely feel of knit against the skin. So there's lots of stuff going on in this area. In terms of sustainability, also great that with 3D printing we can inject the colour into what we print, so we can eliminate dyeing, because dyeing clothes takes up a huge amount of water and pollutes water. So if we can eliminate the dyeing process, that's another benefit of this technology. Then also technology is really being used to engage the consumer. So blockchain is currently the catchphrase of the moment. Everyone's very excited about it. Bitcoin, blockchain, all that kind of stuff. I don't really understand it, but no, I do for fashion because Martin Jalgard has done a special collection for Provenance. I don't know if you know the website, provenance.org. So she uses blockchain to demonstrate transparency to the consumer, because what you can see here on the image on the right is if you scan the garment, you get all the information from which sheep has given. So there's two sheep because it's a melange, so it's a lighter and a darker yarn mixed together. You can see the happy sheep. Then you can scroll down to where it was dyed, where it was spun, where it was knit, where it was put together, and all the way to you the consumer, and telling you how to look after it. So this is a really great way of using blockchain technology to provide authenticity and confidence in the product, because more and more customers want to know where has this come from, who's made it, and how do I look after it. So really great way to use blockchain. Then again, another way to engage the consumer is something called experiential retail, and we're going to hear a bit more about that later as well. So here you see the guy on the left. He's in the new Audi digital showroom. This is not fashion, but the car industry is a little bit more advanced. And they've been using digital showrooms where people can go for virtual test drives. So basically, you go in and you choose your car model, all the trims, the color, and your perfect car, and then you put these glasses on it and you can go for a test drive down the local high street or the Nürburgring or wherever, and really experience this product. So this is this kind of idea that we're providing consumers with a brand or product experience before they buy it, so they can really make up their mind whether they want it and if it's right for them. And this is sort of beginning to come through in clothing. And on the right you can see Topshop have tried this out in Russia, the virtual try-on. So you can go looking all scruffy in your trainers or your yoga kit and try on a wedding dress and see yourself in the virtual mirror looking amazing in a wedding dress. And Amazon have also just patented the blended reality mirror, and everyone's quite scared what they're going to do with it, so watch this space. And then really, you're probably aware of share and reuse and rental. I mean, that's quite a strong trend. Again, technology is used to really enable the consumer to share clothes, because this is really all about the concept of access versus ownership. So do we really need to own our clothes? Do we need to own all our clothes? Because sometimes you just want to wear something once, or maybe twice, or you've bought something really expensive that you don't wear often enough. So you can make money out of it by listing it on this website. So you can list your posh frock and make a bit of money on the side, or you can rent something. So this is a really good way of utilizing products that are out there that have been made and giving them a long and well-worn lifetime rather than being stuck somewhere in a wardrobe. And then coming finally to the end of life of clothing, that's always, it's quite a struggle to know how to recycle or reuse clothing at the moment, and lots of people are looking into innovating technologies that will help with tracking, identification and sorting of clothing. And here you see two examples that both use QR codes. So this QR code is inside of your garment and will travel with the product throughout the whole lifetime. So the user can use it to look, how do I wear and care for this garment? How do I look after it? Where do I take it when I don't want it anymore? What do I do with it? And then the recycler, they can use the QR code to see what is in this garment. How do I recycle it? Because especially with wearable tech that we saw earlier, one of the biggest problems is all the invisible electronics and all the hidden tech that's inside, and no recycler would ever know what's in there, and they wouldn't have, a hope to actually dismantle it, disassemble it. So this is a really good way to actually give people almost like an instruction for disassembly, reuse and recycling. So this was a very quick whirlwind tour of the amazing opportunities around the entire life cycle to build in sustainability into fashion, and I look forward to the other speakers going into a bit more detail on some of these things.
Great, thank you.
So thank you very much for that. I mean, that's a very clear whirlwind tour of the way that technology touches every aspect of the fashion industry. I think, but more importantly, it's very interesting how it's obviously inspiring and leading fashion into completely different places. And I think that's the other aspect of all of this that is really, really interesting. So I now want to introduce Brooke Roberts. As you may well have seen from her bio, if you looked her up on the internet, Brooke started her career as a radiographer. Correct? Yes, good, yeah. Excellent. With the NHS. So you could have been going along and having a scan, and it would have been, Brooke could have been helping you with it. And she became fascinated by the imagery that she was seeing, in particular the imagery of brain scans, and that inspired her to use those sorts of amazing images in producing knitwear. So she has started really her fashion career with that amazing radiographer technology behind her to make inspirational digital knitwear. But she's now running her own design agency, which is focused on creating materials which use technology in many different ways. And she's going to talk to us about two of the projects that the design agency is currently involved in.
So maybe I'll just fill in a little bit more detail while the presentation's coming up. So I'm Brooke Roberts Islam. As Annette said, I am the co-director of a company called BRIA, and my other co-director's in the third row there, so what we do is we create smart and sustainable textiles, and we have a number of projects that we're working on at the moment, and we span commercial projects, so we make materials for industry. We also work at the research end of smart materials and sustainable materials. So just working out how much I can tell you about the industry.
It's okay. We'll get there in a minute.
Well, I can tell you a little bit initially about my background. So, as Annette mentioned, I used to be a radiographer in the NHS for over a decade, actually. So for a long time, and I decided to go back to university and study fashion design, thinking that I would completely change careers. And when I graduated from fashion, I realised that I wasn't quite ready to leave science behind, and reflecting on the state of the fashion industry and what's available in fashion, where the inspiration and ideas come from, which is usually colour or a previous decade like the 70s, or maybe materials, I thought that there might be scope to look to science and technology as inspiration for fashion, and perhaps launch a fashion brand that spoke to women who were perhaps working in these fields or who had interests in fashion beyond trends. So I was one day doing a brain scan. I was at this point I'd launched my own brand, and I was working part-time with the NHS to fund it. And I was doing a brain scan, and as the images came up on the screen, I thought, wouldn't they look fantastic in a textile? I wonder if I could...
Just an amazing thing to think.
I thought, why not? I mean, this is digital. It's, you know, the machines I've been working on are the very same ones that Anne just showed the Nike Flyknit upper. So that's knitted on the same machine that I was using. So I thought, why not? Why can't I just use a brain scan as a basis of a textile structure and put a whole new spin on luxury knitwear? So that's what I said about doing, despite the fact that the factory that I worked with in Italy thought I was mad. They were like, Brooke, swearing at me in Italian, saying, why would you want to do something so ridiculous? But in any case, I set about trying to work out how to translate brain scans into digital knits. So that's where my career started. From there, I was asked by TED to do a talk about how I can combine radiography and knitwear design, and what makes those two disparate areas work so well together. I've got some images I'll show you of that in a moment.
Well, yeah,
and then from there, I was asked by the Huffington Post to be a contributing writer on fashion, technology and sustainability. As you might be able to imagine, there are not too many people who have had a science background and a fashion background. So with this new fashion tech sector emerging, and the very obvious opportunities, both for designers but also for commercial businesses, there need to be voices out there who can sort of demystify and get to grips with the concepts that are at play between fashion and technology. So I do that for the Huffington Post. So now to move on a little bit to BRIA. So I had my brand from 2009 until about 3 years ago, 2016, 15. And at that point, it started to emerge that there was some serious problems in the fashion industry. Research was telling us that our consumption rates were skyrocketing, landfill issues were becoming urgent, and we simply couldn't continue manufacturing fast fashion and throwing it away at the rate that we are. So at that point, Moyne and I became interested in how technology might help us solve some of those problems. And also with the speaking that I do and the writing that I do, I became more involved in panel discussions that were cross-discipline. So I would sit on panels with roboticists and other technologists who were asking these same questions, but none of us had all the answers, because you need a material scientist and a designer and a physicist and a roboticist to sit together and model solutions to these problems. So to move on now to what we do at BRIA, I'm going to talk about two main projects that we're doing at the moment. One is an EU-funded project, and the purpose of that is to try to find a way to dissolve textiles that would otherwise go into landfill, so garments at the end of life. So our aim for this project is to create a collection, a very small collection of clothes, which we can dissolve, recover the fibres from, and then turn into new materials. And those materials would be perpetual, so they would be recyclable again and again. And the way that we're approaching that is using cellulosic materials, so cotton and viscose-based materials, and dissolving those down to the elementary molecules and then putting them back together in new materials. If we can get the images going, I'll be able to show you a video.
How small are those elements that you break it down to?
So elementary molecules. So talking nano, tiny. Cellulose is quite tricky. It depends on the way that it's manufactured as to the sort of level of dissolution that you can do or breaking down. And that's what makes it really hard to turn back into a fabric. Because that was our initial idea. If we can dissolve a fabric, recover the fibres, make a new fabric and make more clothes, then the cycle never has to end. So that's the holy grail, if you like. But what we're able to do now with the amount of control we have over the dissolution process is reduce the molecules to a state just above that, where we can make other materials, which we can use in interiors, for example, in shops, or for packaging, even plastic type of film that we can make, which isn't plastic, it's not synthetic. So yes, to sort of answer your question, it's those kind of materials that we can make, and that's the kind of level we're working at. And the sort of people that we work with on these projects are Imperial College, Queen Mary, King's College London, and I think I'm almost there with my slides. So I've covered most of this. So hang on, I just want to go back to the beginning. This seems to be going. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Brooke. I'm a
Okay, so I've covered most of the first slide there about my background, my TED Talk, and Huffington Post. I really did practice this well. I think I covered all of those, didn't I? Okay, so that's just a quick snapshot of the TED Talk that I gave and an installation on the stage of some models wearing some of the outfits.
I would recommend, by the way, that you have a look at the TED Talk if you haven't already. It's really interesting.
Thank you.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's I think 12 minutes. It's a snappy one. And these are just a couple of images of some articles that I published relatively recently. One for CNN Style, which was, again, about brain scans and bruise suits. It was a London Technology Week feature that I wrote. One of the very early projects that we did at BRIA was curating the launch of London Technology Week for the Mayor's Office. So we got to go out and meet lots of people who were developing very interesting fashion tech objects and bring them together in a showcase to launch Tech Week. So that's what that article's about. And that's one of my dresses there on the left. I don't mind you said dresses, that's from an MRI brain scan. And then on your left is an article from an interview recently with a lady called Mira Duma, who some of you might have seen in the media recently. She launched a $50 million fund to go out and find the newest fashion tech innovations that are going to help transform the industry. Okay, so at BRIA we have two projects on the go at the moment which I mentioned. There's also one which we finished recently in September. Did anyone go to London Design Festival at the V&A? September last year. Michelle, anyone else? No, oh, it's fine, I'll show you the video, you didn't miss anything. So what we did in September last year was a major project. It was an art project actually, and the reason that we did that, even though we're a smart textiles and sustainable textiles company, was we're very interested in robotics and how that's affecting all industries, actually, not just fashion. And there's a prevailing fear, which you may have noticed about robotics. Most people are scared stiff of robots and what they might mean for us in the future. So what we wanted to do was work with robots in a creative way and present a kind of a hypothesis, I guess, about how we might be able to collaborate and interact with robots in a positive and creative way. So I'll show you a bit more about that as we move through. The other two projects are the dissolvable textile, which I'll show you some imagery on now, and our current residency at King's College. So for Wear Sustain, the impetus behind this sustainability drive, which we're trying to contribute to, is that 85% of clothing ends up in landfill, which is pretty terrifying, and it's draining the planet's resources. What we're doing for this project is creating the capsule collection I mentioned, which will dissolve. And the idea is that customers would return their garments to us at the end of life. So instead of throwing them away, they would return them to us, we would dissolve them and turn them into a new material. It's a fully circular system, so all the chemicals that are used in the process remain in a loop and are recyclable. And actually one of the two processes that we're working on at the moment only uses water. So it's pretty amazing. So it's It's not harmful at all. So what we hope as well is that we can create a whole range of products with this process, which we're actually in testing at the moment with Queen Mary. So I'm going to show you a very short video of where our starting point was for this chemical dissolution testing for wear sustain. If I can make it play.
Hi, I'm Brooke. I'm a designer for BRIA. I specialize in knitwear.
Sorry, this shouldn't be playing the full video.
Hi, I'm a team.
I need to skip through it a little bit. I had said it at the starting point, but it seems to have... Oh, thank you. That's great. I can actually just click on the starting point that I've set, yeah. So I'm just trying to find where this chemical is dissolving.
Compared to current mechanical recycling method and copy.
Here we go. Okay, so in the beginning here, we have a solution of copper sulfate for all the chemical buffs there. This is cotton wool, and so what we do is place the cotton wool in the copper sulfate, and that dissolves the cotton down into cellulose, and then it's possible to take a syringe and remove the cellulose and inject it into a sulfur solution that then reforms it as a filament. So it turns it back into a fibre. So as I mentioned, it's the challenge we have actually with that process is it's not that it's not possible, it's that it's not possible to do to the kind of grade that we need to then respin it and make textiles again. So chemically it works, but we got to that point and then couldn't take it any further. Sorry. Okay, so I'm just going to go on to the next slide if it will let me. Okay, so the next project that I'm going to speak about is the King's Artist Residency that we're doing at the moment. The concept for this residency is that we spend 6 months working with the physics and robotics PhD students at King's and one of the professors that works with them to try to help them to integrate some of the data capture they've been doing with conductive threads that they've embroidered onto garments. So within robotics and the research being done at King's, there's a huge interest in understanding how our bodies are functioning. So understanding how muscles work and understanding how to read vital signs from soft sources. So with our knitwear background and our understanding of how to use the same machines that Nike's using for the fly knit trainers, one of which you can see in the corner there, that's the knitting machine. With our knowledge and experience in using those machines, we can take the research that the King's team are doing and embed it into soft textiles. So what we're ultimately trying to do is remove all of the cables and the wires and all the things that stop these garments and these objects actually being wearable. So we're at the stage now where we're knitting sensors so that we can have a soft fabric on the skin that absorbs information and absorbs data that we can then model and know how the body's functioning underneath. So the applications for this are obviously vast in terms of research. We can start to understand how to rehabilitate people who have had injuries better, when we can analyse what their muscles are doing. We can stimulate the muscles and we can help them to retrain. But we can also make really cool products, so sportswear products that people might want to use for workouts and to understand better how they're doing with their health and fitness. Also, there are applications beyond garments for this. So tapping and swiping of soft materials, for example, on the interior of a car or in your home. So there are applications in automotive and aerospace, IoT as well. this is just a quick snapshot. On your left is a legging that Kings has produced already. It has lots of wires, as you can see, and embroidered sensors on top. And we're now working on what you see in the other image, which is integrating all that and making it like a regular pair of sports leggings. Another example of what we're doing at Kings is integrating the kind of exoskeleton type retraining device in plastic into knit. It's through my career actually as a radiographer, I've realised that there are lots of incredible devices that have been designed and made that work very, very well in terms of rehabilitation, but because they're so ugly, there's no better word, well, ugly and maybe a bit embarrassing as well, it's very difficult to convince people to wear them, for good reason. So in order to make sure that we can help people to recover and have the best health, if we can hide the technology through digital knitting or any other means, then we have a much better chance of having them fully rehabilitate and still sort of maintain their personal, their confidence without having to look like they're needing rehabilitation. So, lastly, some images of Slave Master, which I mentioned, which was our installation at the V&A during London Design Festival. We were in the Raphael Gallery. We worked with KUKA Robotics. So you can see in the right, or in your left corner, your right corner, there's an orange robot arm. It's an industrial robot arm that's usually used for automotive manufacture. And what we did was create some floor sensors which we placed around the robot, and then worked with a dance company to choreograph the robots to move in response to what the dancers were doing. We used two different kinds of robots actually. So the one in the foreground is, as I said, an automotive manufacturing arm. In the background is a cobot called Eva. I'll show you some footage of Eva in a moment, but Eva's designed to work alongside of humans collaboratively. So if you bump or tap Eva, she stops. She's also designed so there are no trap hazards for hands. So she's really great at helping humans assemble very tiny electronics. It won't be a surprise to anyone that consumer electronics are selling like hotcakes. The demand for production in China simply can't be met by a human workforce. And also the tiny components are not readily constructed well by humans. It's an immense amount of eye strain and dexterity required. So it's jobs like that the robot Eva are very good at. So there's more and more use of this kind of robot in that sort of manufacturing. We were interested to see how Eva might react to dancers. So again, we choreographed Eva to respond to what the dancers were doing. So I've got a video here.
So the piece that we've created with our collaborators is called Slave Master. The idea really is we're creating a dialogue between humans and robots. We wanted to consider the role of the slave master being reversed.
We took it a bit further as well because we're actually trying to get the audience to feel some empathy for the robots as opposed to the humans in this piece.
Just seeing the technical side and the creative side pulled together in such a phenomenal way in such a short amount of time is really quite spectacular.
Actually, this piece comes as a whole together in the performance, but in reality there's a lot of work in each unique, in the movement of the robots, in the movement of dancers, in the projections.
So we also fed data from the the cobot into an algorithm we developed with a company called Hallution, so that we could try to portray what the robots might be feeling based on the torque and the movement of the robot at any given time. So we set a sort of palette of graphics that were darker and more exaggerated when Eva was sort of recoiling away from the dancer, and then brighter, gentler, softer colours when she was not being quite so interrupted. So I just have one more slide. Yeah. So as I mentioned, the reason we created Slave Master was because we were interested in flipping the sci-fi narrative, which is that robots are here to take over the world and steal all of our jobs. We know that automation is becoming very common, so we think it's a useful thing if members of the public can see robots in action and perhaps understand a little bit more about how they work. Automation does mean that products can be made faster, cheaper, in any geographic location. So, as Anne mentioned, there are quite a few factories that have been set up by Adidas, Nike, Reebok, that do actually use automation to make shoes, make trainers. But then some of the questions we're asking as well are, if robots are doing the work of humans, how does that affect our future? We like to think that we'll do all the creative things and leave the sort of manual stuff to our automated friends. It's very important that robots are becoming collaborative, as I mentioned, because we will start to work alongside of them. They will become prevalent in our environment. We're also interested in knowing whether robots might be used in the future in more creative ways, rather than just in industry. And now my details.
Great, well thank you so much.
So lots and lots of interesting things there to think about. I mean, two things that immediately came to mind as I was listening, particularly to the end there, was those of you that joined us in Stratford to see the RSC play last January will remember that Ariel, the spirit, had several avatars, and the costume that he was wearing reacted in exactly the same way to a robot to the movements of the actor. So the avatar moved in exactly the same way and took the same sort of expressions. So you've got that sort of idea coming through in drama and in plays. And then you mentioned robots and design, and of course the dress that I showed right at the beginning, the IBM Watson dress, was partially designed by the artificial intelligence which is built into Watson. So I'm afraid robots aren't just going to do the menial tasks, there's going to be an awful lot of other things, collaboratively, let's hope. Now I'd like to pass on now to our third speaker, which is Sanja Vukelic, and Sanja's going to tell us about her own design label and the fabrics that she has been involved with, which has many of the aspects that you've been talking about in terms of sustainability and the whole green agenda. And she is actually wearing her own garments, and she's brought another one for us to have a look at. So I'm going to hand over to Sanja to tell us all about what she's done.
Thank you. Hi. Actually, when I listen to all this sounds quite low-tech. Well, I just decided to start SDress because I saw that there was basically just a gap in the market for sustainable clothing, which is also beautiful and very practical. I just looked at, obviously the fast fashion, which I think, as Brooke said, I mean, we just can't keep on doing that. And it probably, like diesel cars, is going to be outlawed at some point, but it's going to take some more time because we're only now talking about outlawing diesel cars, so, outlawing fast fashion. But yeah, it is just unsustainable what is happening with all the waste and also some of the manufacturing practices. So in SDress we try to obviously look at environment, but also at ethics of the brand. So everything is made in Italy, and also to make use of some of the new technologies and to make the clothes look a bit different than what they are. We use what they are now. We use also lots of bonding technologies and actually ultrasound to bind the fabric. So these are some illustrious moments in the life of the brand. So we had yes, Mrs. Amal Clooney and the young actress Rose Leslie on the red carpet, and Dame Helen Mirren. So yeah, the interesting thing about fashion is that actually it has not, the way we make clothes has not changed for about 100 years, and actually even more, because a lot of the things that we still use have been around for centuries. So since everything in our lives is slowly starting to change due to technology, that's how it's going to have to be in what we wear as well. So the interesting thing is, if you look at all the sort of big brands and going into multi-brand shops, it is very much the same thing that we've always been doing. So, for example, this is made without a single piece of thread. It's all bonded, thermally bonded, and it's machine washable and no iron. So this is the sort of the main thing about the brand, that it has to be very practical, because this is what I think the future is also about. So, like our phones, they can do a lot of things, so we need to have our clothes to be able to do a lot of things. So, for example, this is, it doesn't really crease, and it's very, very low maintenance, packs very small. So, for example, I've got a dress here, which is in my handbag. So, it's just really about functionality, and we have a lot of beautiful clothes to buy available, but
yes, you can, this is one of the dresses that you'll see on the screen.
Can we pass it around?
Yeah, you just you can just
don't run off with
scrunch it up. And then the incredible thing is, it just goes in a washing machine, comes out, just needs to be hanged, and that's it. It's ready to go. So, in fact, just sort of coming on to what was said before, I think, of course, we will have to use technology to invent some new ways of recycling things and making new things. But also, I think we have to try and re-educate ourselves about how we see fashion, how we look at clothes. Because the fashion industry obviously has been sort of trying to. You see the thread, because it's got a bit of a thread. Yeah. So yeah, I try not to use thread as much as I can, but in some elements it's just inevitable. So very interesting. Yeah. I need to move away from thread altogether. Yeah, so we need to re-educate ourselves about how we see, the fashion has become something which is really instant. You go online, you go into a shop, you buy something cheap, like for example, this example of t-shirts. I mean, it's one of the incredible things that I find is how is it possible that a cotton shirt, which requires about 2,000 liters to be made, can be one of the cheapest things that can be bought on the market. I mean, it's just, unthinkable. The whole thing about sustainability also has to hinge on the fact that we have to start having a different relationship to clothes. And this is why I try to design things which are quite minimalist, so they can stay in the wardrobe for a long time and can be made to look different by just the way we wear it, with accessories or the way it's combined. But yeah, it's something that lasts for a long time. So we use only fabric, one type of fabric, which is made in Italy, and a very, very interesting establishment, which is completely carbon neutral and fully eco-certified and endorsed by World Wildlife Fund because of the way they make their fabrics. So they use very little water, much less than for any, I think it's about a third of the water that is used for any other fabric. It's recycled on average about 3 times, and then all the water that's being used is never released into the environment unfiltered, so it's actually put into a special process which then cleans it up, so there's no waste at all. And then they use solar panels for, cooling of the production unit. So it's a really quite an amazing place. So we use only their fabric. In fact, I was telling Brooke I'd be interested in using other fabrics, but for now this one is the one that works, and that's got this thing that it's 7 times as durable as most materials. So it just sort of washes and washes, it doesn't lint or fade or lose shape, and it's pretty indestructible. I just prepared one of the slides is about, this very worrying statistics that, the impact of the fashion industry on our planet. So it's the second biggest polluter after the oil industry. Which is very scary because, at least, oil we really need, but do we need all the clothes that we have in our wardrobes? We definitely don't. So it's a very, it's a kind of a mindless thing in itself that our second polluter is for something which, it's just pure vanity. So, the statistics are really quite scary. So it's, as you can see, 1.9 billion liters of water every single day used in India to process fabrics, and 2,295 liters to make 1 pair of jeans, and it's similar for a t-shirt. About 800 different chemicals are released into the waterways after processing cotton. So I'm wearing a cotton t-shirt, shirt, but really every time we buy a cotton t-shirt or shirt, we really sort of need to think about that. Sorry, I'm not sort of following my slides too well, but anyway, just more things about the pollution of fabrics and how we try to minimize that by using very durable fabrics. So another aspect of this fabric is that a lot of the fabrics, especially wool and cotton, when they're washed, they release microparticles into the waterways. So what has been found is that fish actually have these bundles of fabric in their guts because they're eating the water that's coming from our washing machines is just bringing lots of these fluff that ends up in their guts. So the nice thing about the fabrics we use is that it's very stable, so the linting does not happen, and therefore it's not as polluting. And then, as Brooke was saying, also just a lot of our clothes just end up in rubbish, and there are some more chilling statistics about how much rubbish we produce from our clothes. So SDress is one of the solutions because it's just very practical, machine washable, doesn't need to be ironed. Also, there are lots of, we don't use any buttons or zips or labels, so again, just saving on the metal, on the thread, on labels. If you think about some of the clothes have these ridiculous labels which are huge and quite unnecessary because we will just cut them off straight away. So also our labels are nice because they don't scratch or anything, so they're very nice on the skin. So yes, I mean, again, just a few more things about SDress. It's great for travel because it packs very small, and it's hypoallergenic and even protects from UV rays, so it's a very clever fabric. And then, yes, the design is seasonless, made to last, not follow any trends, and just make a woman feel nice and beautiful and elegant.
Lovely.
Well, that's really it. I think I've said it all.
Lovely. So thank you so much, and thank you very much for bringing your addresses along with you. So you can come up and chat to Sanja afterwards about her dresses, which are for sale. So you can buy yourself a sustainable wardrobe. Now we're going to finish with the bit of fashion which touches us all, in the sense that we all buy online. And the retail experience, in my personal view, is both frustrating and empowering in more or less equal measure. So I'm going to now ask Tom Adelooya, to come and talk to us briefly about his company, which is called Metail, which he has put together in order to help us on this particular problem. Over to you, Tom.
Thank you very much. I've actually just come back from 2 amazingly fulfilling months of paternal leave, being the only man at Stay and Play and morning coffee mornings. So it's great to start the year in the same vein. So thank you very much for having me. I'm extremely honoured to be here. As mentioned, my name is Tom Adelooya. I'm the CEO and founder of Metail. And I just want to take you through what we do, and also then, as I am an economist, talk through some of the big global trends that I'm seeing for why now is an extremely and spectacularly important time for a huge transition in how technologies are changing the way the industry will work. Right, so we all have the dream of an amazing shopping experience that looks beautiful, that is beautiful, and we can find the stuff we want really easily. But the reality is, if for anyone who's been to Westfield, it's an utter nightmare. I think this year I bought all of my Christmas presents online, more than half of them on my phone. And for me, and in fact it was my wife who inspired me, the challenge has always been around how do you find stuff that fits you well. My wife, at the time that I was thinking of a new business idea, had real challenges with the in-store experience, going to a change room with 4 pieces, getting hot and bothered, and therefore giving up, trying to find something more because you only have a short space of time to find something, and the online experience was no better. And for me, it was always, I was never any good at finding outfits, putting stuff together. I could pick pieces, but if you've ever seen my daughters, after I've changed them in the morning, you'll know I don't have a great eye for outfit combinations. So off the back of those challenges, and effectively then being inspired by some interesting research technology I actually saw from a professor at Roberto at Cambridge University. He was looking into basically going from Anthony Gormley statues, photos of Anthony Gormley statues, through to creating 3D accurate models of them. So much so that is now how Anthony Gormley creates his statues. And just 18 months ago, he finally gave Roberto a thank you present of his own statue, which he offered to us to have in the office, but I can't afford the insurance. So what are we about? We're about making clothing fit for all, and how we're going about doing it is by digitizing the fashion world, digitizing every garment, creating that digital form for everybody to try on and see how they fit virtually. So it's digitizing the fashion industry in the same way that we've seen the TV and music industry be digitized before us. So that ability to try everything on and find the exact right fit. So what are the core pillars for us in terms of how we're attacking the industry? It's all about driving efficiencies, creating new exciting experiences, and generating data insights off the back of that to help drive the whole industry and improve the supply chain. How are we doing that? We've invented a new way of doing model photography. The woman never wore the clothes, so you can photograph the model separate to the actual garments and effectively clothe an unlimited supply of garments on different models in mix and match style for website imagery, massively reducing costs. In terms of experience, we allow you to try clothes on your very own self and get an understanding of what works and what doesn't. And from the data insights, we can start to understand what are the right garments that work for the right people, the different demographics for different retailers of the garments, and help them use that data to start to create the right garments for the right people and target the right garments at the right people and start to minimize the huge amount of waste that we talked about already today. So, in terms of the experience, it's a straightforward one. You create your own mean model from basic information, height, weight, bra size. Off the back of that, we can estimate what your likely hips and waist are to be. You can then choose an ethnic match in terms of your model, and then you get to see that model presented, which you can then basically browse the website as you go, be it mobile or web. For reference, we've just started working with the largest fashion players in India. India is an incredible mobile market. For the biggest player in India, Myntra, 85% of their sales happen on mobile through their app. Off the back of creating your own model, you get to see the garments, you can spin around 360 degrees, and you can get an indication of size recommendation by garments, see how outfits work together, start to get recommendations of how you could complete that outfit based on what other people, your size and shape and similar preference to you, also tried on. And to date, we've had over 7.5 million mean models created. So, as The Economist, why is the time now? There have been lots of false prophets and false dawns before me when I started Metail. But now, right in this 12-month period, has been the time where I can really see the inevitable future of shopping through your own you happening. And that's through some big changes. Number one, the threat of Amazon. Amazon is now responsible for over 55% of mobile product search. In the US, last year it became the #1 seller of clothes from a standing start less than 10 years ago. And over the Christmas season, it was responsible for 89% of all retail sales online. We're also seeing at the moment a huge loss in cheap and ethical labour. Over the last few years I've spent time in China. China is gradually kicking all of the clothing manufacturers out of their market by increasing the minimum wage and really tightening up on its controls of what it wants to see happen in terms of sustainability and corporate responsibility. It wants to push labour into higher value jobs, both in terms of tech manufacturing and other forms of manufacturing. It's moving its people through into the middle classes. Over the next 3 years, it intends to move the remaining 43 million people it has in its nation out of poverty. And that's on top of the 350 million people it's already moved into the middle class. So where are these people going? So a lot of the big clothing manufacturers have been moving to the likes of Vietnam and Thailand. And that was based on TPP. Trump came into power, he's kicked TPP into the long grass. And we've seen a gradual movement towards localization of manufacturing all over the world in terms of protectionist, nationalist, and populist ideals. So the idea, again, when you link that to the sort of gradual loss of cheap manufacturing, that's pushing manufacturers really hard towards robots, automation, and data. We also see a big sort of trend in terms of see now, buy now, which is putting a huge amount of pressure on the supply chain. Retailers want their goods quicker from the catwalk. 6 months is too late. People think the garments are old, even though the garments haven't ever been manufactured because they've seen 1,000 images of them on Instagram. We also have a big rise in consumer expectations. Consumers generally always want three things. They want better quality, cheaper, more convenient. And through the likes of Uber, Deliveroo and Prime Now, the expectations of being able to get stuff delivered to you now, right here, have skyrocketed. If a cab is going to be more than 4 minutes, you get cross in the way where half an hour was perfectly acceptable only 5 years ago to wait for a minicab. And how has the shopping experience transformed? Back in the old days, you would have a good relationship with the sales assistant you knew at your local store. Now all your time is being spent on the phone. We've seen a big change where time is the new unit of currency for retail. It's no longer about footfall anymore on the high street. It's basically a big move to time spent on the phone. The phone has become the retail channel. If you look at the difference in terms of time spent, that is where the big retail players are going to come from going forward. We're in the middle of an accelerating transition of retailing from traditional retailers to consumer-focused technology companies. People that are focused on engaging you through the phone. So what does that mean? How can this time be maximized when fashion falls disjointed? There are all these different ways of engaging in fashion. Discovery apps, sharing apps, social, different places to shop, and different ways in which to think about wearing clothes each day. Our proposition is about trying to link all those things through your own, what we call me model, your 3D self. So be able to see and discover those clothes on your body size and shape. Be able to share the outfit you're going to wear for that party next week on your own me model. Be able to shop using it. And also being able to use things like Google Assistant to really understand what you should be wearing based on the weather outside. So we see ourselves as being a big helper in that transformation of retailing to consumer tech-focused companies. And that's what makes this time right now very exciting for what we're doing at Metail. In addition, in terms of the technologies we're looking at, in terms of data, it's only now that companies are of the size and focus that they can really utilize the data that we're starting to generate. In the UK, there are only really about 2 different types of companies who have data people. We're talking to guys in India who are actually looking at data at such a granular level that where they see high returners with low profitability, they switch off returns for that individual customer. That's the level of detail that you need to be at to be able to be effective in this current day and age. If you want to compete with Amazon, you have to be good at data. So we're able to actually now understand consumer behavior better than most of the retailers that we work with. Understand how they shop, when they shop, what different types of consumers they are, the differences in behavior between different shape and size consumers, the probability of them returning garments based on their size in relation to the garments being sold, and understanding that combination. Understanding the difference in terms of tolerance by brand and by different size demographic in different countries. This is really exciting stuff for us. And we want to start to see that turn into then retailers bringing that data all the way back around to make the right clothes for the right people. So many retailers are still making clothes based on outdated fit models from 10, 20 years ago, which don't represent their actual customers. So for us, it's about enabling a more efficient consumer-centered supply chain, being able to take that data into every part of the cycle. And ultimately, this will lead to the end-to-end evolution of made-to-measure ready-to-wear prices, which we're already working on today. So our largest investor is one of the biggest clothing manufacturers in the world. They make 1 in 6 men's shirts in the US. We're currently working with them on basically bringing the concept of made-to-measure clothes at ready-to-wear prices by cutting out that full waste. If you know the size and shape of your customer, you should be able to make the right garment for them. And especially because of those other trends, we're talking about robots, automation, and localized manufacture. Just-in-time manufacturing will come to those markets, and it is happening. If you didn't know it today, 40% of books sold on Amazon, physical books, are made to order. So the moment you basically click that order to buy that book, it is actually made there and then, just in time. They will be doing that as well for garments over time. And that will become an incredible logistics supply chain to enable designers to be incredibly, in my view, creative and move the value back into design and creativity in a way which might create a new golden era. So there is no reason going forward that you shouldn't be able to demand garments that are your size. So that's me, a virtual you. Does it excite or terrify? For me, the moment is now and it's happening now. Amazon last year bought a company to push on body size and shape. And in fact, if anybody saw the news today with their launch of Amazon Go, you'll notice a key line in there about how they've made it work when it was failing in 2016. It was the ability to understand and track body shape. So that's something they hadn't been able to do, and an acquisition last year enabled that for them. There's a company called ZOZOTOWN, which is the biggest online fashion retailer in Japan. They, late last year, announced the Zozo suit. They have committed in excess of $10 million to send out free suits to their customers, in excess of 700,000, for customers to put on, which, based on stretch sensors within the suits, will actually give them size and shape information of those customers and enable them to start to really focus their garment recommendations to those customers. It's a very Japanese way of doing things, very different to everyone else, but the big guys, the big global e-tailers are all pushing in understanding size and shape and how that connects to consumers, and pushing in a way that traditional retailers are falling behind. And it's these sort of moves into technology which are also probably behind the announcement today of Richemont buying Net-a-Porter. So all of these big moves are happening. It's consolidating very fast, but it's a super exciting time to be in the fashion industry. Thank you.
Tom, thank you very much. That was, again, really interesting. Looking at the aspect of retail is absolutely vital. Now, we've got a few minutes for a few questions. We're just past the 8 o'clock, so obviously people have to go, absolutely understand. And I'm sure there are some questions on the floor, so I'd like to invite questions if people have questions. Helen, the starter, and we'll go around.
This is to Anne. She talked about share and reuse. And my daughter, who's 17, is completely into share and reuse of her mother's wardrobe. So she doesn't feel that she needs to own anything, just that she can wear it, and that's completely fine. The other thing you touched on was blockchain. And I work for IBM, we're heavily into blockchain, and what we're seeing at the moment is that 90% of everything we buy is shipped via container, right? And generally 200 pieces of paper or documents are involved in that shipping, wherever it's from, right? So what we're looking to do is to get rid of that. And blockchain is essentially a distributed ledger with complete transparency. Everyone who's involved in the ledger or the network has access to it and can see what changes. So what it does is it reduces the cost and the time of this by about 60%. So in terms of, as we continue to have supply chain challenges as demand increases, there's also blockchain at the back end of that, trying to take out all the mystique of the supply chain. And it helps with things like horse meat found in McDonald's, for instance. You know, you can, if you've got a distributed ledger where you've got complete transparency, you know exactly where that horse meat came from. And basically you can keep most of the small farmers, the small suppliers in business because you know which store it is, you know which supplier it was, basically. So blockchain is equally as exciting from a supply chain perspective as the front end.
No, very interesting, very helpful. You had a question.
Yeah, I had a question, because I think the point on how much clothes, how much we throw away our clothes, etc., etc. But you all talked about the scientific side, which is absolutely fascinating, the fabric side of it and various other aspects of it. But the one side that nobody's mentioned is the behaviour side of it, because to a degree, there's two aspects. I think more women than men. One is that we can't be seen in the same outfit twice, so that's one aspect. I know my husband's worn the same dinner jacket for the last 5 years to events, and yet every time he says to me, "Get a new dress," I'm like, I'd really rather not. And I do wear the same thing, but most people don't. That's one thing. And the other thing of it is that back to that, it's the price point, isn't it? Many women would rather have 3 new tops for, I don't know, say £200 or whatever, rather than buy one item. And that's the training. That's the vision. It's trained us to be that way.
But that's what I was talking about. Yes, that we need to change our behaviour.
So what are your thoughts? Because obviously, and your product is seen, your skirts is only about £400. It's full length, so it's obviously a lot of fabric. It's not a huge amount of money, but a lot of people look at that and think, well, I'd rather buy 4 skirts, whatever, as an example.
Well, not when you remember what you're doing to the planet, and if you have children. I think this is actually what, it's the change in consciousness.
Yeah, but as human beings, we're trained for the fast result.
Well, we have
the
to
kick now, it's why so many drug users.
But that's why we have to think.
About, what I mean? But how, what I'm saying is, how are you doing that? How are you changing that mindset?
So I was going to say that one of the biggest guys that we've met in Japan are going at it in a different way, and I think is perhaps pretty unique to that culture, with reference to Tokyo, very small houses, very small amount of space. So what they've developed is a way in which they provide a storage system for all of these people. So if you have too much clothes, you can send it in. They're aiming to digitize all the garments that come in. They're basically clean it for you and start to advise you on it. It's a seasonal change. Here's this top from last year. Now it's time to bring it back in, and here's how you can accessorize it. So I think your point on, we want to be individuals, right? We don't want to all look the same and have the same amount of clothes. We want to be able to dive in and out. Means that there have to be services that come in that allow for that and create that capability. And I think that will be, in my mind, through the digitization. So if you can digitize the garments, and therefore effectively what they're doing is opening up a secondary market. So there'll be a secondary market if they can digitize your wardrobe, such that you can resell and sell on to other people, because they'll know who's actually going to be interested in it and can move the garments in and out. I mean, I think Zozo Town's used business does over 100 million. So it's not small, and Japan has a huge vintage market, so they have that already beginnings of basically shipping stuff in and out and wanting to be individuals. So I think absolutely that we all want to look different, be individuals, and present ourselves that way. And I think if we digitize garments, we can move towards that sort of structure. We already see things like in music and TV. Like, I have access to every song that's ever existed on my phone, and we never thought that was going to be possible. I sat in a meeting with a whole bunch of music executives only like 15 years ago who never believed that was going to be possible. It is. So I think if consumers aren't going to change, they want the same things. They want better quality, more convenient, cheaper. It's always going to be the same. You can't change that behavior. So what you have to do is create the structures that move with it, and services that move with it. So I think if you look at
So two other elements I've got something to say on this, and we'll come back to you. I know how passionate you are about this.
I think we have to understand that the magnitude of the problem that the planet faces requires a paradigm shift. It simply doesn't make sense to expect consumers to stop buying the amount they're buying. To educate every consumer, millions and millions of consumers to buy less and to spend more on each item. I think it's a completely flawed approach to solving this problem, and that's one of the reasons why we've focused so heavily on how science and technology can help us to reuse the textiles that have already consumed a vast amount of the planet's resources. If a pair of jeans has taken 7,000 litres of water to produce, we need to make those fibres perpetual. We need to be able to use them over and over and over again, so that if someone throws some garments in landfill, We take those garments out of landfill, we dissolve them, we recover the fibres, we make new textiles. That's how we turn to a circular system that doesn't continue to suck all of the planet's resources. To my mind, and many other environmentalists and scientists, that's the solution to a problem of this size.
Yeah, I mean, it's really want to reiterate, I just remember when I started off in sustainability in 27, people used to say there was all these people just buying one thing a year, and you only wear, was all these, you should only wear this one thing and it should be expensive and you shouldn't go to H&M and all this kind of, it doesn't work, because fashion is about having fun with your clothes and feeling good in your clothes. So I've really seen a shift, the things we've described over the last 5 years or so, to embrace what fashion is and develop the services, the processes, the materials, to go with it and make sure we don't create things that cause environmental harm, but they're finding other solutions. It's not about telling people not to buy clothes or wear the same thing every day.
It's very interesting, I think, that the problem is clearly one which is now well recognised. And that gives you hope that there will be potentially solutions found to it. And I think we've heard a number of different solutions here.
But can I just say one more thing about this? Just on a different note, because I really believe that the consumerism as we are seeing it now is very much perpetuated by the industry, and so this thing about being seen in the same clothes, it's about being creative with your clothes. So you don't need to have new clothes all the time in order to look different. You can actually make the same. In fact, one of the things that I always find from my customers is they always say, your dresses always look different if I just change something like an accessory. And the thing is that I actually believe that the young generations are very much moving towards this type of thinking, because you will hear the young people talking about price per wear. So they're already, changing.
Their mothers have been ingraining it in them. Because I have a 17-year-old, well, that's what I say to her, price per wear.
Exactly, but it's the new consciousness. And of course, technology is great, but it cannot solve all our problems. And we need to, approach some of our problems intelligently and rely on our own creativity and resourcefulness, not just, technology to just come and magically take away the problem.
It's a very interesting and clearly really very serious issue, and we're not going to solve it tonight. So I'm going to cut that particular discussion there. You had another point you wanted to make?
Yeah, well, it's also a question. So just to say, this evening has been unbelievably enlightening. So thank you. And I just wondered two things. Firstly, I actually feel completely ignorant about the fact of how much water goes into the consumption of clothes, and I don't think that it is that well recognised, and there may be reasons why industry are keeping things like that quiet. So on that, how much do you think governments, legislation, trade authorities should be playing a role in that? So for example, if I knew that the blouse I'm wearing now had however many litres of water, and then I knew that another shirt had less or was made through a more sustainable fabric, even if it was £10, £20, £50 more, if I have the buying power to do that, I might think about it differently. I actually don't think, I think the conversation is starting, but I think there are a lot of people who might think differently because more broadly.
So is there actually programs at the moment to help to enlighten, if you like, consumers about these problems?
I think most of the literature that we've spoken about today is sort of industry focused, actually, rather than consumer focused. So it's a really good point, and I guess it's something that's kind of, yes, the industry doesn't really necessarily want you to know, I suppose, and I think that's probably one of the issues that will remain. I don't think it's in the best interests of companies to necessarily disclose that. What they might do is produce sustainable capsule collections or produce part of their collection sustainably to try to start educating consumers a little bit more.
It would be very interesting at the moment with food. You know, you have to put the calorific content, you have to put what's in the food. It would be really good if you had to do that with clothes.
Well, that's where blockchain comes in. I mean, that's the start. People are doing it, and when people know, you just hold your phone on your jumper and you find out all the elements. Then you can make an educated decision. But at the moment, we have no idea. So I think more and more is coming through because it's getting cheaper to use those technologies and to have.
And a lot of brands are using it as a point of difference. So you can actually seek out the brands. I would say pretty much all new brands of the last 5 years, all of them talk to these topics, and they talk to them very strongly.
I was in New York last week and I saw a presentation from the Levi's brand guy. He was talking about the revival of Levi's, and I was thinking, oh, that's great. Now I'm thinking, oh, no.
I'm wearing nudie jeans, right? So they will repair them for life. So that's their whole thing. So they were like, if you start to, you get a loose thread or you get a hole, bring them in, we'll repair them. That's a selling point for me. So that's why I bought those jeans. I think it's those things which are key for different people. Like Everlane, the New York-based brand, their whole thing is like, here's the transparency of the supply chain.
But at the moment it's a differentiator. It's not legislated, right? It's not you must do this.
But I don't think it will be. I think it's the brands that are doing it will be the ones that will survive long term because consumers will want that information. So
it's a differentiator.
Well,
just a tip.
And I'll bring you back to this.
Sorry, I was just going to give a tip for anyone. If you buy organic cotton, producing organic cotton uses a fraction of cotton that's not organic. It's not farmed in the same way. It's not as water intensive. So if you want to do something instantly more sustainable, buy organic cotton rather than non-organic.
That's a good tip to finish
as a consumer.
I'm very conscious of the time. It's now 8:20. And we said we would finish just after 8. I think this conversation could go on a very long time. Obviously, feel free to come and talk to speakers, talk amongst yourselves, stay here for a little bit longer as you wish. And thank you all for coming. We'd like just to say a little bit about the next events. We've got a members-only event on the 1st of March. Many of you are members, but those of you who are not, if you wish to become members, please just send us an email. It costs £50 a year to become a member, and that gives you access to all of the public events like today, and also member-only events. We held about 6 public events and a couple of member-only events, sometimes 3. So the next one is actually, it's a members event, is going to be Sarah Wood, who is the co-founder of a company called Unruly, and she recently sold to News Corp. And she's written a book called Stepping Up, how to accelerate, how to accelerate your leadership potential. My writing, if you want to read it. And so if you're interested in that, you need to become a member if you're not already. We will also be doing a Mobile World Congress event after the Mobile World Congress, as we have on many years now. That will probably be at the GSMA, and it'll be some time after that. The event is actually the 26th of February to the 1st of March, so it will be sometime during March. And the committee is working on the rest of the year as hard as we can. We'll do TED Talks again, I'm sure. We'll do something to do with women's entrepreneurs, as we did last year, and there'll be a couple of others which we're putting together at the moment. So that's what we're going to be doing during 2018. Just remains for me to ask you to thank the speakers again in the normal way, and have a safe journey home.